Even though you've been freeloading, unemployed for so long, you're so cocky. Get out. Don't think you can live this luxuriously forever. As I lifted my face from the laptop I had been working on at the dining table, a sharp pain shot through my neck. Ouch, that's hot, I cried out, turning around to find my mocking mother-in-law holding a hair iron. I remembered she had been preparing to go out in the washroom earlier. Now she was pressing that hair iron against my neck. So even a parasite like you feels heat. I was just testing how thick-skinned you are. You're completely useless, yet you live such a luxurious life. But I do work hard. Why are you treating me so terribly? You call that working? Staying at home and being lazy is not a job. It's about time you stop leeching off us. However, the real parasites were my husband and mother-in-law. I was the one paying the $5,000 rent, living expenses, and allowances for both of them. Despite that, I wondered why I had to endure such treatment. I've reached my limit. Leave this house immediately. Who knows what I might do next? Just to be clear, you really want me to leave? Once I go, I'll never come back to this place, you know. Yes, please do. I never want to take care of someone as poor as you again. I had become indifferent to such a home and family, tears mixed with frustration and pain in my neck. I packed my belongings without looking back and left my in-laws' house for good. My name is Kelly, 35 years old. It has been 2 years since I got married. Even before marriage, I had been working from home as a freelance writer. After graduating from college and working in a company, I had to quit and return to my parents' home when my father had an accident. I couldn't let my mother, who had difficulty walking, take care of my father alone. That's when I started looking for a job I could do from home. I began as a freelance writer with simple internet-related tasks. As my father recovered and I found more time, I gradually took on more work. It turned out I was quite suited for writing, and my income steadily increased. My articles were well received by readers, leading to direct contract offers. Before I knew it, I was earning more than I did as a company employee. During this time, I attended a reunion with my college circle friends. Hey, isn't that Kelly? Long time no see, someone called out to me. There, I met Ben again, who would later become my husband. 2 years my junior in college, Ben was always the life of the party, known for his quick decision-making and energetic personality. After graduation, he worked for a renowned foreign company. We didn't interact much during college, but that day, we talked in depth for the first time. Perhaps because our personalities were so different, our conversation never ran dry. After meeting a few times, we naturally started dating. Hey, I really like foreign fashion accessories. My dream is to open a select shop that deals only with my favorites. In fact, I've already started preparing for it. Ben shared his future dreams with me. I enjoyed listening to him. His mature intellect combined with a childlike curiosity made his stories seem achievable. Even a reserved person like me felt exhilarated just by listening. So, I was genuinely happy when he proposed. A turning point came about a year after we got married. My father-in-law passed away suddenly. It was an unexpected death. Kelly, would you mind living with my mom for a while? My husband asked. Due to his father's job, his parents had been living in a luxury apartment for several years. But after his death, it was difficult to continue paying the high rent. Mom is still struggling to accept his sudden passing. She wants to stay there a bit longer, but the lease still has about a year left. Could we stay for that period? Indeed, it must be hard for your mother to move so soon after your father's passing. We can't leave her alone. Don't worry about the rent. Mom and I will cover it. But since it's expensive, could you help with the living expenses until my father's inheritance arrives? It's fine. No problem. It's a bit on the expensive side, but it's only for a year after all. Even though I had no interest in fashion or luxury goods, I was intrigued by what the interior of a luxury apartment might look like. At that time, I underestimated what it would be like to live with my mother-in-law. Little did I know it was the beginning of my hardships. From the first meeting, it was clear my mother-in-law didn't like me. When we went to announce our marriage, she said, "Of all people, Ben had to choose an older woman. How did you seduce him?" I felt looked down upon. Thankfully, my father-in-law intervened then, but now he was gone. From the day we started living together, my mother-in-law made her intentions clear. I still don't accept you as Ben's spouse. Hearing this, my spirit, already trying to support my tired mother-in-law, began to break. The next day, from my appearance to household chores, I continuously received petty complaints and sarcasm. Kelly, even if you're indoors, stop dressing so sloppily. Do you realize where you are? Always be ready for guests. Dress properly. Huh? This isn't my loungewear, though. What? That's not loungewear. Jeans are not acceptable. Wear a skirt at the very least. Always have your makeup done before breakfast. Is this the high-end lifestyle? I wondered, but obediently responded with, yes. In the evening, did you buy these ingredients from that store? How can you make such a poor meal with ingredients from there? It was from a nearby luxury supermarket. I'm sorry. Did it not suit your taste? Mary, it's just a simple salad. Ben likes it, so I often make it. But yes, that supermarket is quite expensive. My goodness, how embarrassing. Act in a way that doesn't bring shame to our family. You never know who's watching. She sighed deeply, shaking her head in disappointment. At that moment, I made a firm vow to myself. I would do everything in my power to be recognized by my mother-in-law. From grooming to cooking skills, I worked hard every day. However, her critical eyes never softened. Initially, I took her sarcasm and cold words lightly, but they gradually began to feel crushing. I felt invalidated, powerless. I wanted to confide in Ben, but our life together had changed. We used to enjoy our time as a couple daily, but since moving in, our opportunities to see each other had decreased. Sorry, I've been really busy with work lately, he said tiredly, making me feel unable to speak my mind. But being human, I have my limits. I felt the need to share my stress with Ben. Hey, I have something to discuss. Oh, I actually have something to talk to you about too. I quit my job 3 months ago. What? Quit? What do you mean? Don't worry, I've already started another job. Remember the select shop I always wanted to open? I finally launched it. I'm co-managing it with Senior Eric. What? You never mentioned any of this before. Senior Eric was a widely respected figure in our university circle, admired for his leadership and charisma. He had combined creativity and business sense, successfully developing and selling a game map in college and starting a startup with friends, showcasing his talents. I believed there was no doubt about his ability as a business partner. I had heard rumors of his recent success in web design. Ben, in his usual gentle tone but looking slightly guilty, said, I didn't want to worry you or Mom. I'll work harder from now on. Will you support me? I was moved by his words, yet hesitant. I'll support you. But then Ben brought up an unexpected request. Thanks. So about the rent for this house. Can you cover all of it? I felt a mix of surprise and confusion. What? But weren't you and your mother supposed to split the rent? It's impossible for me to pay it all by myself, especially since I'm already covering the living expenses. My heart was filled with anxiety. Ben looked at me earnestly and pleaded, Please, Kelly, this has always been my dream. It's taking longer than expected to turn a profit. That's why I want to invest more in advertising. I'll definitely get this business on track before we leave here. I need your help to do that. Moved by his passion and earnestness, I couldn't refuse. I could afford the rent with my income, and fortunately, we had some savings. More importantly, I had never forgotten the day I chose to marry him, sharing and empathizing with his dreams and passion. If you say so, I understand, but only until the lease on this rental ends. Also, I want to know more about the store you're running. Of course. Thank you, Kelly, Ben said, and showed me the website of his select shop. I was impressed by its charm. Is there anything I can help with? I offered, but Ben firmly declined. I want you to focus on your work, and please don't tell my mother about this. I don't want to worry her unnecessarily with this new development. Thoughts of my mother-in-law completely left my mind. I wholeheartedly wanted to support Ben's business, but the amount I had to pay each month only increased. Gradually, managing the entire household budget, financially aiding my husband, and even giving an allowance to my mother-in-law became my responsibility. My only wish was for the rental contract to end quickly. Kelly, could you put off your computer work for a bit and do some cleaning? Since you're staying here, you should be more proactive with the household chores, my mother-in-law said. I hurriedly replied, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mother. I'll start as soon as I finish this job." "This is your job?" "In effect, excuses. Get it done quickly. We have guests coming this afternoon. After you're done cleaning, please leave the house." My relationship with my unaware mother-in-law remained unchanged over time. Since we started living together, and on days when she had guests, I always had to leave the house after finishing the cleaning. It seemed I was bothering her. Fortunately, I could work anywhere with my laptop, which was a small consolation. However, that day held a different outcome. When I returned home in the evening, my mother-in-law, looking satisfied, greeted me with, "Welcome back. I tidied up your room." Confused, I rushed to my office. The room was indeed tidied, but rather my belongings were organized. I don't own many things, but in the center of the room were a large suitcase and 2 duffel bags. "What does this mean, Mother?" I asked. "This room was initially prepared for guests. I can't accept someone with your lack of housekeeping skills using it. If you want to use this room, you'll have to pay an appropriate fee. If you don't like that, leave immediately. Don't expect to live luxuriously here for free," she declared. I swallowed my words. Why must I endure such treatment? As I silently bowed my head, my mother-in-law said with satisfaction, "I'll say it again, I don't accept you as Ben's wife." With that, she huffed and returned to the living room. Tears welled up in my eyes from frustration. I tried to contact Ben, but he didn't answer his phone. After I messaged him about the incident, he replied, "Please bear with it a little longer." Unable to contain my anger, I poured out everything to Ben when he returned late at night. "Just hold on a little longer. I'm stressed with work too. Don't worry about my mother. It's just a bit more endurance," he said. "I'm paying the full rent, and now she wants me to pay for my room too." "I can't tolerate her unreasonable demands any longer," I protested. After hearing this, Ben hurriedly tried to calm me. "I'm really sorry. I'll talk to her. Once we leave here, you won't have to see her again. Please just bear with it for a little while longer," he pleaded. "Soon, and then I'll never have to see her again." Ben's words slightly eased my anger. The next day, Ben seemed to be talking to his mother before he left. We had breakfast together, but there were no usual sarcastic remarks from my mother-in-law. Since my room was tidied up, I decided to continue working at the dining table. "Are you leaving today?" At my mother-in-law's words, I looked up from my computer. Instantly, I felt a sharp pain in my neck. "That's hot," I screamed, turning around to see my mother-in-law standing there with a smirk, holding a hair iron. "What are you doing?" I exclaimed. That was all I could say as I held my painful neck and rushed to get a cooling pack from the fridge. Thinking back, my mother-in-law had been getting ready to go out in the washroom earlier. She had used the hair iron she was holding against my neck. "Oh, so you can feel the heat too. I wanted to see how thick-skinned you are. Living such a luxurious life, yet so useless." "I work hard too. Why would you do something so terrible?" "Working? You're just using your at-home job as an excuse to slack off. Nothing but an unemployed person. It's about time you consider our situation and become independent," said my mother-in-law. In reality, I was the one bearing the rent and living expenses, yet I couldn't understand why I was being treated this way. Before I knew it, I was glaring at her. What's with that look? The look of a poor person. I've reached my limit. Leave this house immediately. Otherwise, I don't know what I'll do next. Am I really allowed to leave? I won't come back here ever again, you know? Yes, that's fine. I'm fed up with taking care of poor people like you. Filled with intense pain and disappointment, I cried as I packed my things. Since my mother-in-law had already organized my belongings the day before, it didn't take long. I no longer cared what happened to this house. I left my in-laws' home without looking back. After receiving treatment at the hospital, I went to my usual cafe to calm down. The spacious table arrangement and quiet environment were ideal for focusing on work. As I was contemplating whether to contact Ben, I was suddenly approached. "Kelly, is that you?" To my surprise, it was Senior Eric. "It's been a while. How's Ben doing?" "Senior Eric? Long time no see. Ben is in your care. I heard you were the co-owner." "Sorry, I couldn't greet you earlier," I replied as he furrowed his brow. "Co-owner? What do you mean? I just helped with the website design on Ben's request." "Really?" I was shocked. He lied then. I heard you were the sponsor, Senior Eric said. I was surprised by this revelation. Ben had rented a different apartment and seemed to have worked hard for the first few months. However, he had others manage the inventory and shipping from the beginning. For the online shop's promotion, he didn't do it himself but paid for advertising services. I advised him to do it himself at first, but he insisted it wasn't the role of a businessman. He seemed fixated on his ideal image of a business owner, As a result, there was no increase in foot traffic or sales, just mounting expenses. Despite this, he gave up too soon. According to Senior Eric, Ben is now deeply involved in internet business, paying high consultant fees. By the way, have you heard about your father-in-law's inheritance? There was quite a bit of debt, not as much as expected, but your mother-in-law is managing her share, so they're financially comfortable. Plus, he said, with his wife's good income, even if he fails, they'll be fine really. But that funding is also running low. He's been living extravagantly, acting like a business owner, and sometimes treating his juniors. I was at a loss for words. The reason I had to cover my mother-in-law's allowance was that they had used up my father-in-law's inheritance. Ben's recent frequent requests for financial support were probably because his funds were running low. He hadn't told me about the inheritance, perhaps for that reason. Doubts connected with Senior Eric's words, and everything became clear. I got up unsteadily, thanked him, and left the cafe. Before I knew it, I was in front of my parents' house. Seeing me with my luggage, my father looked surprised. Tears overflowed as I saw the faces of my parents, who I had been holding back my sorrow from. Tell us what happened. Your mom and I are always on your side. That's right. You always try too hard on your own. Their warm words made me cry again. Then crying, I told my parents everything. Ben's secrets, the terrible treatment from my mother-in-law, and the fact that I was bearing all the expenses for my in-laws' house. My parents were both outraged and cried with me. There's no need to go back to your in-laws' house. Live for yourself from now on, my father said. His words deeply resonated with me. After talking about everything, I felt a weight lifted from my heart. What have I been living for these past months? The only message from Ben was a short one asking, "Where are you now?" After that, I received several similar messages. After ignoring several similar messages, his attempts to contact me stopped altogether. To Ben, my existence must have been just that insignificant. More than sadness, I felt a firm resolve. Just having a meal with my parents, I could feel the warmth of a family. Maybe what I had been seeking were such simple moments of happiness. While staying at my parents' house, I gradually felt like I was regaining myself. About 2 weeks later, Ben called, probably because the rent payment was due. "Kelly, where are you? Have things calmed down with Mom? She feels bad about it. Aren't you coming back soon?" "I'm at my parents' house now. I plan to live here from now on. Your mother said she's tired of taking care of a poor person like me, and I'm not going back. Let's get a divorce." "Wait, why divorce? If living with Mom is the problem, let's sort it out. I'm coming to pick you up. Let's talk in person." "Why should we talk now when there was no contact before? And how's your business?" After that question, there was a moment of silence. "Actually, I'm seeking advice from someone knowledgeable in business. There might be a big plan realized next month. That's it. Let's go look for a new place to live before that," Ben said. "Don't change the subject. You haven't told me anything important. That's why I don't want to talk anymore. I'll write the divorce papers and send them to you," I said and hung up the phone. However, that night, Ben suddenly appeared at my parents' house. I talked to him through the gap in the door with the chain on. "Kelly, please don't be mad. Let's go back. Mom feels bad about it. Come on. Stop sulking." "Sulking? I was kicked out of the house by your mother. Don't take it seriously." "Not take it seriously? Did you know why I left the house? Your mother pressed a hot hair iron against my neck and burned me. I don't know what else might happen, and there's no way I can go back." I brushed back my hair to show him the burn mark on my neck. "Did Mom really do that?" "I'm sorry. I didn't know. Why didn't you tell me? Mom told me it was just a simple fight. I'm really sorry. Are you okay?" A simple fight? His flippant words made my anger boil over. I had planned to decide on a divorce without facing him, but my indignation overflowed. I felt the same anger towards both my husband and mother-in-law. I thought of blaming them thoroughly. The outrage in my heart seemed to burn. Anyway, I'm not coming back. You should go home too. I'll contact you again tomorrow. Really? Will you actually contact me? I can't accept a divorce without even discussing it. If you don't contact me, I'll come back tomorrow. Ben said this and left. I prepared and arranged to meet with Ben and my mother-in-law 3 days later in the afternoon. The place for the discussion was a cafe restaurant on the 30th floor of a luxury hotel. On the day, I dressed in a high-end brand dress, revealing my neck and styling my hair up. My mother-in-law looked displeased yet pleased at the sight of me. Thank you for gathering today. I have reserved afternoon tea, so please enjoy it. I smiled at my mother-in-law and Ben. Ben seemed a bit relieved at my calm demeanor. Soon, tea and small appetizers were served at our table. Before we started eating, my mother-in-law began to speak to me. Kelly, I'm truly sorry about last time. I was wrong. Ben scolded me harshly. You'll forgive me, won't you? I didn't respond immediately and quietly continued eating my appetizer. Then I turned my neck to show the burn scar. I can forgive you. Not until this scar fades. Also, are you aware that Ben quit his job? Ben shook in surprise. My mother-in-law looked at him in astonishment. What? What do you mean he quit? He's been saying he's busy every day. He's busy right now. He's an honorable businessman. Wait a minute, Ben panicked. What do you mean, businessman? Did you start your own business? Ben, explain yourself. As my mother-in-law interrogated him, I smiled contentedly while watching Ben struggle to make excuses. At that moment, the tea stand was brought to our table. I enjoyed the delicious-looking sweets while watching Ben and my mother-in-law argue. The view from the luxury apartment was great, but the view from this 30th floor cafe was also special. By the way, Ben, what have you been engrossed in lately? I heard from Senior Eric that you quit the select shop. Is that true? What? How did you... Ben lost color in his face, looking surprised and scared. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law tightly gripped his arm, confused and repeatedly asking, What happened? Why would you do that? I know everything. Ultimately, you were more obsessed with being a successful person than a businessman, right? Despite having no business sense, you just impulsively went ahead and ended up spending all the inheritance your father left, didn't you? Wait, Ben, what does she mean by that? You used up all the inheritance. Could it be... My mother-in-law's voice was full of suspicion and anger. Yes, exactly. Ben has used up all your inheritance as well, right? So our household finances are completely depleted because of Ben. Hey, stop. Don't talk anymore, Mom. Don't worry. I'll find a solution. Ben was frantically trying to control the situation. My Ben, I believed in, betrayed me so much. My mother-in-law's voice was full of despair, and she leaned back on the sofa in shock. Her expression was clouded with despair, and she seemed unable to say anything more. I continued speaking calmly while pretending to be unaware. Mary, actually, I have been covering all the expenses for the house. Even the allowance you thought Ben was giving you came from my wallet. In addition to that, I've been paying for Ben's expenses while he's been gallivanting around as a businessman. No way. How could that be? Don't worry, Mom. With Kelly's income, we'll manage. Ben's true intentions were revealed. Don't joke. I heard you're getting into another business. We're already at the bottom, spending money and just playing around. Stop it now. My words were a bit harsh, but in that situation, it couldn't be helped. The cafe fell silent, filled with a heavy atmosphere. I finished the tea left in my cup in one gulp and declared, I can no longer take care of you two who are now penniless. You will need to take care of next week's rent payment. And regarding the divorce, let's proceed firmly through a lawyer. As I stood up, I took out the divorce papers from my bag and placed them on the table. Ben pleaded tearfully, I don't want a divorce. Please don't do this. But my mind was already made up. My mother-in-law's face was trembling with paleness. Kelly, wait. I'm truly sorry. I had no idea. Without you, we can't survive. Kelly, help us. We're family. The word family coming out at this moment was unexpected, but it was too late. You said before that you didn't accept me as family. Didn't you marry as compensation for the burn? I would like you to start with this payment. I hope you still have this month's allowance. Saying that, I left the two of them in the hotel. Ben remained silent, ultimately saying nothing, looking up at the high-rise floors from the ground. I hope they felt the sensation of being cast down from heaven to earth, marking the end of my revenge. Afterward, we got divorced. Ben resisted at first, but when I threatened to report my mother-in-law to the police, he quickly relented. I thought I couldn't forgive my mother-in-law, but her disappearance from my sight would erase her from my memory. As long as they stay out of my life, that's enough. For that reason, I demanded a substantial amount from Ben for emotional distress. Later, they apparently moved to a cramped apartment. However, the relationship between my wasteful ex-husband and betrayed mother-in-law seems strained. Aiming for independence, and my once arrogant mother-in-law is now reportedly doing part-time cleaning work. I couldn't help but laugh at the thought of that scene. Currently, Ben is struggling with debt and working multiple part-time jobs at night. It seems that working as an employee was more suited to his true nature. The active personality of Ben that I once found attractive was, from another angle, just impulsive and shallow foolishness. Living in the luxury apartment and the inheritance from my father-in-law must have revealed his flaws more clearly. I continue to work actively from my parents' home. I met with Senior Eric later and conveyed to him the details and my gratitude. He appreciated my writing skills, and now I am receiving work from him. For the time being, I plan to focus on living for myself with my parents.
Growing up, my life was what many would call a fairy tale. My name is Evelyn Harrison. I was born into the Harrison family, one of the most influential families in our city. Our name was always in the papers for one event or another, but behind closed doors, we were just a regular family. My father ran Harrison Industries, a massive conglomerate with its fingers in everything from tech to fashion. I spent my childhood in large mansions, attending posh schools, and going on extravagant vacations. But despite all that, I never felt truly connected to that lifestyle. I enjoyed simple things, like reading a good book or having heartfelt conversations with close friends. During one of our family events, I met Daniel. He was different from the people I was used to. He wasn't from a wealthy family. In fact, he was there catering for the event. His laughter was genuine, and he had this light in his eyes, something I hadn't seen in a long while. "Hey, you're Evelyn, right?" he asked, handing me a drink. I nodded. "Yes, and you are?" "Daniel," he replied with a smile. "I work with the catering team. This is a big gig for us." We started talking, and it felt like we had known each other for years. Our conversations were simple, genuine, and heartfelt. He introduced me to a world outside my privileged bubble. A few months into our relationship, I introduced him to my family. My father, always the businessman, asked, "What do you do, son?" "I'm a caterer, sir," Daniel replied confidently. My mother, always the gracious host, said, "It's good to meet you, Daniel. Evelyn has told us a lot about you." After some time, I met Daniel's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. They lived in a modest house surrounded by lovely neighbors. Mrs. Thompson hugged me the moment she saw me. "Oh, Evelyn, we've heard so much about you. Welcome!" Mr. Thompson added, "Daniel never stops talking about you. It's good to finally meet the girl who stole our boy's heart." As our relationship grew, I would often use my father's money to treat Daniel and sometimes gift something to his parents. It felt good to share my blessings with someone I loved. The morning everything changed began like any other. I was sipping my morning coffee when my phone rang. Seeing my father's name flash on the screen, I answered cheerfully, "Good morning, Dad." There was a pause on the other end before he replied, his voice heavy with concern. "Evelyn, I need you to come to the office, now." The urgency in his tone caught me off guard. "Is everything okay?" "Just come. I'll explain when you get here," he responded, ending the call. Confused and worried, I quickly dressed and headed to Harrison Industries. The office was buzzing with activity, but not the usual energetic kind. There were hushed conversations and many concerned faces. The receptionist, usually so chirpy, gave me a sympathetic smile as she directed me to my father's office. Upon entering, I found him sitting behind his massive desk, papers scattered everywhere. His face was pale, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Dad, what's going on?" I asked, my voice filled with worry. He took a deep breath, clearly trying to find the right words. "Harrison Industries. We're declaring bankruptcy." My heart felt like it dropped to the floor. "What do you mean? How did this happen?" "We've been facing losses for a while, Evelyn. I thought we could turn things around, but we're out of options. Our debts have caught up with us." I sank into a chair, trying to process the news. Our life, as we knew it, was changing. Returning home, I hesitated at the door, thinking of how to break the news to Daniel. When I walked in, he sensed something was wrong immediately. "Evelyn, what happened?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. I took a deep breath. "Harrison Industries is going bankrupt." Daniel looked stunned. "But how?" "We've been facing losses. I had no idea it was this bad," I admitted, tears forming in my eyes. He wrapped his arms around me, trying to comfort me. "We'll get through this, Evelyn, together." But things moved quickly after that. Our posh apartment, the one filled with memories of our love, was the first thing we had to let go of. My father's assets were frozen, and suddenly, the lavish lifestyle I had always known vanished. "We'll have to move in with my parents," Daniel said one evening as we sat among packed boxes. "At least until we figure things out." I nodded, swallowing my pride. "It's just for a short while," I told myself. But little did I know, the real trials of our relationship were just beginning. The safety net I had always relied on was gone, and now we had to navigate the world together without the cushion of wealth to soften the blows. Moving into the Thompsons' house was a stark contrast to what I was used to. Their home was warm and cozy, but much smaller than the sprawling spaces I had grown up in. But I reminded myself that it was only temporary. At first, everything seemed fine. Mrs. Thompson would cook delicious meals, and Mr. Thompson would often share stories from his youth. However, as days turned into weeks, I began to notice a change. Simple things, like the way Mrs. Thompson would watch me when I took an extra serving of dinner, or how Mr. Thompson would turn off lights in rooms, even if I was still using them. One morning, as I was setting the breakfast table, Mrs. Thompson commented, "You know, Evelyn, back in our days, we would only use one type of jam for breakfast, not 3. Helps save money." I looked at the 3 jars on the table, suddenly feeling embarrassed. "I'll keep that in mind," I replied softly. Daniel started to change too. He wasn't the easygoing, jovial person I fell in love with anymore. He would snap at small things and often come home from work visibly stressed. One evening, I tried to talk to him. "Daniel, is everything okay at work?" I asked, noticing how tired he looked. He sighed heavily. "It's just stressful, okay? We need money, and I'm trying to do everything I can." I reached out, trying to comfort him. "We're in this together. Maybe I can look for a job too?" He pulled away. "Maybe you should. It's high time." It stung. I wasn't used to this version of Daniel, but I swallowed my feelings, thinking he was just stressed. One Saturday, as I was cleaning our room, I overheard a conversation between Daniel and his parents. "She doesn't understand the value of money, Ma. She's lived a silver spoon life." Mrs. Thompson replied, "I've noticed. She needs to adapt, Daniel. We can't keep supporting her lavish tastes." Mr. Thompson added, "She needs a reality check." I felt like I had been slapped. They thought I was being a burden. Tears filled my eyes, but I kept quiet. The once warm house started feeling cold and unwelcoming. Every action of mine was scrutinized, every decision questioned. The people who had once been so accepting were now judgmental. Despite the increasing tension, I tried my best to fit in. I took up a job, started contributing to the household expenses, and even cut down on personal expenses. But no matter what I did, it never seemed enough. Evenings that were once filled with laughter and stories now became silent. The television would play in the background, but the atmosphere was always tense. Simple joys, like celebrating birthdays or anniversaries, became a thing of the past. It was clear that the financial strain was affecting not just our lifestyle, but our relationships too. I often found myself reminiscing about the old times, wishing things could go back to the way they were. But as each day passed, the divide only grew wider, and I couldn't shake off the feeling that the worst was yet to come. It was a few months into our stay at the Thompsons' home when Mr. Thompson's birthday approached. In previous years, this day had been marked by a simple family dinner at home. However, this year, they decided to celebrate at a nearby restaurant, inviting me to join them. I felt a mix of hope and anxiety. It was a chance for us to bond as a family again, away from the confines of the house. Maybe things could start to improve. Maybe this dinner could be a turning point. On the evening of the celebration, I made sure to dress modestly, not wanting to give any room for negative comments. As we entered the restaurant, I took in the familiar ambience of a place I had visited many times before. Back then, under different circumstances. The waiter led us to a reserved table. I noticed the patrons, some glancing at us, recognizing me from the old days. The thought made me slightly uncomfortable, but I pushed it aside. We settled in, and menus were handed out. I glanced through, noting the prices. Back when my family was affluent, such numbers would have been insignificant. But now, every dollar counted. Wanting to be considerate, I decided on a relatively inexpensive dish. Daniel spoke up. "I'll have the steak, medium rare." It was one of the pricier items on the menu. His mother chose the lobster, while Mr. Thompson opted for a full 3-course meal. I felt a bit surprised, but said nothing, waiting for my turn to order. As I was about to speak, Mrs. Thompson interrupted. "She'll have the garden salad and tap water." I was taken aback. "Actually, I was thinking of the chicken." Mrs. Thompson's voice had a sharp edge. "The salad is plenty. We need to be mindful of our expenses." I felt humiliated. My cheeks turned hot, and I could feel the eyes of nearby tables on us. Daniel chimed in, chuckling. "Yeah, Evelyn, can't always get the fancy stuff anymore." My heart sank. This was the man I loved? The man who once promised to stand by me through thick and thin? Before I could muster a response, Mr. Thompson added, "You should be grateful. Some people don't even get bread." Their laughter echoed in my ears, and a heavy lump formed in my throat. I felt like a spectacle, humiliated in front of an audience. With all eyes on me, I finally found my voice. "When my family was doing well, I shared everything I had with all of you. And now, when times are tough, this is how I'm treated?" Mrs. Thompson scoffed. "It's about time you learned the value of money." Daniel looked away, unable to meet my gaze. Mustering all the strength I had, I said, "I may not have the money I once did, but I still have my dignity." I stood up, leaving the table, the restaurant, and the whispers behind. The dinner, which I had hoped would be a turning point, had turned into a disaster. But it was also an awakening. I realized that while money could be lost and regained, some relationships were damaged beyond repair. And as I walked out into the cool night, I felt more determined than ever to find my way out of this mess. Morning rays streaked through the room, and with a heavy heart, I made my way downstairs. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee was a stark contrast to the cold atmosphere that greeted me. There, sitting around the breakfast table, were Daniel, his father, and his mother. The previous night's events still fresh in their minds and mine, the silence was palpable. Eager to break the tension, I decided to address the elephant in the room. "I understand last night was uncomfortable for everyone. Can we discuss it?" Daniel's mother scoffed. "Uncomfortable? That's one way to put it. It was downright embarrassing, Evelyn." His father chimed in. "What were you thinking? Making a scene in a public place? And over something as petty as a dish?" Daniel looked at me, his eyes void of the warmth they once held. "You could have taken it up with us privately." I was hurt, I defended myself, trying to keep my emotions in check. "When I saw that you all intentionally ordered the cheapest dish for me, it felt like a slap in the face." "It's just food, Evelyn," Daniel said dismissively. "No, it's not just about the food," I countered, my voice trembling with anger and hurt. "It's about respect, understanding, and love." I turned to Daniel, searching for any trace of the man I fell in love with. "Do you even love me, Daniel? Or was it always about the money? He hesitated for a moment, then with a smirk replied, "Money is a significant addition to love, isn't it?" I felt like the ground beneath me had vanished. The weight of his words, filled with cynicism and devoid of any emotion, hit me harder than anything before. And to add salt to the wound, his mother added, "You were never a good fit for our family, always spending without thinking. Now you're just a freeloader." The hurt was too much to bear. The walls of the house, which once felt welcoming, now seemed to close in on me. Without another word, I turned away, my heart heavy, realizing that the love I thought was unbreakable was built on a foundation of convenience and materialism. Tears blurred my vision as I drove the familiar route to my parents' home. Every turn, every tree, brought back memories of a life that now felt worlds away. I wasn't sure how my parents would react, but I needed the comfort of home. The driveway looked the same, lined with the roses my mother loved so dearly. As I stepped out of the car, the front door opened, revealing my mother's worried face. "Evelyn!" She rushed towards me, pulling me into a tight embrace. Her warmth was an immediate solace, and I allowed myself a moment to just be held. Pulling back, she cupped my face, her eyes scanning for answers. "What happened, my love?" I swallowed hard, recounting the events of the past few months, ending with the disastrous dinner. She listened intently, her face a mixture of concern and anger. "Oh, Evelyn," she sighed, "you deserve so much better. I thought they loved me. I thought Daniel loved me." She brushed a strand of hair from my face. Sometimes, adversity reveals people's true colors. We were interrupted by the sound of my father's footsteps. He had a newspaper in hand, an amused expression on his face. "Is that my daughter I hear?" he said, feigning surprise. "Dad," I chuckled through my tears. He enveloped me in a hug, then held the newspaper out to me. The headline read, "Jackson Enterprises, from the brink to booming." "We're back on track," he said with a smile. I looked at him, shocked. "But how?" He chuckled. "Turns out the financial crisis wasn't as severe as we thought. With some smart moves and a bit of luck, we've not only recovered, but are thriving." I blinked back fresh tears, this time of relief. "Why didn't you tell me?" He shrugged. "I didn't want you to worry. Besides, I wanted to see who truly cared for my daughter, money or no money." My mother shot him a look. "You and your tests, John." I laughed. Typical Dad. We spent the evening reminiscing, the warmth of my childhood home providing the comfort I so desperately needed. As night fell and I lay in my old room, I realized that while I had lost a partner in Daniel, I had regained something far more valuable, my self-worth and the unwavering love of my family. No amount of money could replace that. The weight of the recent events left an indelible mark on my soul, but it also gave me a newfound clarity. With renewed determination, I made my way back to Daniel's parents' home one last time, a suitcase in one hand and a folded newspaper in the other. Daniel, caught off guard, looked at me. "Evelyn, what are you doing?" "Ending this charade," I replied calmly, handing him the divorce papers. His face went pale and he stammered, What is this?" "Exactly what it looks like. I'm done, Daniel." His mother, with a smug look on her face, chimed in, "Good riddance. We knew you'd come to your senses and leave our son. It's for the best." Suppressing the urge to snap back, I unfolded the newspaper, handing it over to them. The headline gleamed, "Local business tycoon's company makes remarkable comeback." Daniel's father took the newspaper, reading aloud, his voice quivering. After facing potential bankruptcy, the company managed to not only stay afloat, but has also seen unprecedented growth in the past few weeks. My gaze never wavered. "You were so eager to label me a freeloader. It turns out life has a funny way of showing us who truly is shallow." I left the house, with no intention of ever looking back. Over the next few days, my phone was inundated with calls from Daniel, messages full of regret, apologies, and pleas for a second chance. And just when I thought I had heard the last from them, postcards started arriving at my parents' home. Picturesque landscapes, with scribbled messages from his parents, each bearing the same desperate sentiment. "Forgive us." but their words meant nothing. The pain and humiliation they had put me through were still fresh in my mind. One evening, after yet another call from Daniel, I decided it was time to put an end to this. Answering the phone, I said, "Daniel, I've moved on. Your calls, your parents' postcards, they mean nothing. We had our time, and it's over." The line went silent for a moment before he whispered, "I'm sorry, Evelyn." But apologies weren't enough. I was done giving chances. It was time to rebuild and focus on myself, far away from the toxic web of deceit and conditional love. My phone buzzed with a message. It was from Jenny. "Hey, heard there's a new art gallery opening downtown. Want to check it out?" I quickly typed back, "Absolutely. Let's go this evening." The gallery was brimming with people. The art ranged from vibrant paintings to intricate sculptures, each piece telling a unique story. Jenny and I moved from one exhibit to the next, soaking in the creative atmosphere. At one particular painting, a depiction of a phoenix rising from the ashes, I felt an odd connection. It mirrored my own journey. Jenny, noticing my fixation, commented, "It's beautiful, isn't it? The idea of rebirth, rising from adversity." I nodded. "It's symbolic. Reminds me of, well, everything." Later, as we grabbed a bite at a nearby cafe, Jenny looked thoughtful. "You know, there's this workshop next week. It's about rediscovering oneself, finding one's passion. Want to give it a shot?" My initial hesitation was evident, but then I thought, why not? Sure, let's do it. Over the next few weeks, the workshop became a transformative experience. I dabbled in different activities, finding solace in painting. It became a therapeutic outlet for my emotions, each stroke reflecting my innermost feelings. One evening, after a particularly intense session, the workshop instructor approached me. "Your work, Evelyn, it's exceptional. Have you considered showcasing it?" The idea had never crossed my mind. "No, I haven't, but thank you." He smiled. "Think about it. Your art tells a story, and it deserves to be shared." Days turned into weeks, and soon, my small home studio was filled with paintings. The once unpacked boxes now contained art supplies. The transition was evident, from a woman scorned to an artist reborn. My father, ever the supportive figure, suggested organizing an exhibition. And with a little persuasion, I agreed. The opening night of the exhibition was a blur. Friends, family, and even strangers admired my work. The Phoenix painting, inspired by the gallery visit, was the star attraction. The evening concluded with a surprise. The workshop instructor approached, holding a check. "A buyer, Evelyn, for the Phoenix painting." Stunned, I stared at the figure. It wasn't about the money, but the validation. My journey, my pain, my rebirth, it had resonated with someone. As the days settled and the exhibition came to a close, I realized that life was full of unexpected twists. But with each downfall, there was an opportunity for a new beginning. My past with Daniel was just that, in the past. I had found my passion, my calling, and for the first time in a long time, I was genuinely happy. Life had come full circle. From pain to passion, from despair to hope, it was indeed a new beginning. And I was ready to embrace whatever came my way.